Hey everybody, welcome. Appreciate you joining me this evening. Tonight I'm going to show you how to make the perfect chicken breast. So we are going to pan fry the chicken breast first, and we're going to finish it off in the oven. And I'm going to pair it off with some Brussels sprouts. So now, before you start scrolling and say I hate Brussels sprouts, I'm not going to watch this video. Trust me, these are really, really good if you've never had them roasted this way. So give it a shot. I think you're going to like it. So what I've done is I've taken about a little over a pound of Brussels sprouts. And then what you want to do with these is you want to go ahead and just trim off that bottom piece like that. And then as close to the middle of the sprout as you can. Put your slice down there. That way they're going to cook really evenly. So if you have any loose leaves, you can just kind of pull those off. And let's do one more just to show you how. So you see that piece right there? We don't want that. We're going to cut that off right down the middle. Some of these leaves will probably fall off during the roasting period, and that's okay. But we want to get the excess of them off while we're cutting them up. Okay, so let's go ahead and put these into a bowl. So if you watched me the other night when I made the asparagus, I put it all on a baking sheet, and then I mixed it up with some olive oil and some lemon zest. So I'm going to do something similar tonight, although those were spears, so they were kind of hard to get into a bowl. These are really easy to get into a bowl, and I find this the easiest way to mix it all up and then just put it on the baking sheet from there. So what I've got, guys, I have got 1/4 cup of olive oil and 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. This is really good balsamic vinegar. This is from Trader Joe's too, so it's got a little picture of Tuscany on the front. So this is really good olive oil. And then a tablespoon, normally I would add of maple syrup. Now I'm not going to do that tonight because Steve and I have cut sugar out of our diets as of about 2.5 weeks ago. And we're just not going to do sugar tonight. But it's really, really good if you want to do it that way. If you don't, it's okay. You could even eliminate the balsamic vinegar and just do it in olive oil if you want. But for tonight, I'm using this, and not this. Not using that because you know what? They say abs are made in the kitchen, not made in the gym. So if that's true, I have lost that recipe. So if anyone has it, please send it to me because I'd like to make it every single day. All right, so what I'm going to do is just take this and pour it over the Brussels sprouts like that. And then I'm going to mix it all up. Make sure that you're coating each one of them. Pretty easy stuff going on right there. I'm going to add a pinch of salt, and then a pinch of pepper. I like pepper. Okay, and then what we want to do from there is we're just going to put them all onto a baking sheet. This is so easy. Okay. And that's really all you have to do for your Brussels sprouts. I would recommend that you turn them all over and so that the sliced half is facing down. I'm not going to make you watch me do all that right now. And then these are going to go into the oven with the chicken when we cook the chicken. Okay, so now let's talk chicken. So I have got 2 breasts. These are probably about 7 to 9 ounces a piece. And this is a recipe for about that size of a chicken breast. So these are organic, there's no hormones in them. Sometimes you see those really gigantic chicken breasts at the market. Those aren't really natural, they've probably been pumped with hormones. I wouldn't recommend you buy those. I recommend you stick with organic. Not only is it going to taste better, but it's going to be better for you. So this has been sitting out for about 20-25 minutes. I do recommend that you let your chicken sit out of the refrigerator for about that amount of time before you start cooking it. That way it's going to cook a lot more evenly. Otherwise, the outside might cook a lot faster than the inside. So you don't want that to happen. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pat it dry. Okay, so you just want to pat the chicken dry. Make sure that you're getting any excess moisture off. The reason why we're doing that is because that way it's going to brown better. Okay, so, all right. There we go. You can notice I'm using one hand to handle the chicken and one hand not to handle the chicken. So that way I can touch some other things and not contaminate everything. All right, so all I'm gonna do is salt and pepper this before I start to cook it. So I'm just gonna add some salt. I've got, and you can kind of be liberal on the salt because chicken can take a lot of salt to bring out the flavor. And this is kosher salt that I'm using. So I also use sea salt. There's not as much sodium in either kosher salt or sea salt as you would find in table salt. So even though you might be using a little bit of extra salt, it may not be as much as if you're normally using your table salt. Okay, so there's that side, do the other side. Salt, pepper, other side, salt, and pepper. Okay, so these are ready to go. So now what I'm going to use to make this chicken is I am going to use a cast iron skillet. So this is a Lodge cast iron skillet. I like cast iron. It's really, it's very heavy, but it's really nice to make a lot of different types of things in. Also, it goes easily from stovetop to oven. So that's going to be very important for you tonight. If you're making something like this, you do not want to use a skillet that has a rubber handle on it because that'll burn in the oven. So if you don't have a skillet that can go into the oven, then maybe you can just use another baking sheet and cook this on the top of the stove and use your baking sheet to go into the oven. But for me, I've got cast iron. I'm going to be able to use it in both. So the first thing you want to do is you want to warm up your cast iron on the stovetop on high heat for about a minute. So that's just a dry cast iron. Heat it up for 1 minute, and then we're going to add some olive oil, and then we're going to start cooking the chicken. So let's get ready. Okay, so we've been heating our cast iron skillet for about a minute, a dry cast iron skillet on high heat. Then I've added olive oil, and you can see it's just starting to smoke. That's what we want. We want the olive oil just starting to smoke, and then it's ready for our chicken. So I'm going to put our chicken breast onto the skillet, and I'm going to cook it for 4 minutes on each side. Okay, so that's pan searing. So let's get started on that. So I'm just going to take this. Hear that? We are selling the sizzle. And then I am going to put a splatter guard over that just to keep it from splashing all over the place. Okay, so I'm going to cook these for the next 8 minutes and then we'll get the rest of it done. Okay, everybody, so I've let the chicken cook for a total of 8 minutes. This is kind of what it's going to look like. So it's going to be a little charred on top and the bottom. And then the next step we want to do is we want to put it into the oven. So I've preheated an oven at 375 degrees. This is going to go in for 15 minutes, and we're going to put our Brussels sprouts in at exactly the same time. Okay, so in goes the chicken. And then in goes the Brussels sprouts. Okay, and we'll pull them out in 15 minutes. Okay, everybody, I brought the chicken breast out of the oven, so they've been cooking for 15 minutes in the oven. Just to summarize again on the process, what you first want to do is heat your skillet on high heat on the stovetop for about 1 minute, and then you want to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil on high heat until it starts to smoke, and then you want to reduce the heat down to medium high, and then you want to cook your chicken breast for 4 minutes on each side. Okay? All right, so now what we're going to do is I'm just going to take these off here, put them on a plate. This way I'm going to let them rest. So if you want to keep them warm, you can just cover it with some Riddle Trap. And these guys should sit for at least 4 to 5 minutes before you slice into them. They're still going to continue to cook while they're resting. Now, this is totally optional if you want to do this, but I'm going to make up just a little bit of a juicy sauce to go with this. So I'm going to put my skillet onto a burner that I've already got warming. I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil to it. And then I have got some onion, some garlic. So there's half of a yellow onion that I've diced. There's 4 cloves of garlic, and then there's also some thyme that I've probably about 5 or 6 twigs of thyme. Just a real quick, if you're going to use thyme, they come in twigs like this. You could actually chop the twig really, really fine if you want. It's not going to hurt anybody. But if you want, you could just kind of go backwards down the stem, and then that way you're not using it. Okay, so there you go. I'm going to move these things over here. I'm going to add my onion, add my garlic, and then you want to just mix this up and let these brown for a couple of minutes. Speaking of the twigs, you know, nobody's going to get hurt eating those twigs, right? If you slice them up really, really fine. But if you're ever making a stew or a soup and it calls for a bay leaf, you want to make sure that you remove that bay leaf before you serve it to anyone, because people can choke on a bay leaf. I actually remember I nearly choked to death on a bay leaf. Steve, you remember we were at that restaurant that Arnold Schwarzenegger used to own. This is over 25 years ago. I think it was called Shotzi's on Main in Santa Monica. And I had a bay leaf or whatever I was eating, and I started to choke really, really badly. Luckily, I was fine. So we didn't have to worry about that. But I just wanted to let you know to be really careful with something like that, because someone could be really, really hurt or worse on a bay leaf. So just be really, really careful. If anything would have happened to me, Steve would have gone back to Arnold Schwarzenegger and said, "I'll be back with my attorney." But he didn't have to do that, so that's good. All right, now I'm going to add the thyme. Mix that there with it. And then I'm going to add 1 cup of chicken broth. You could also add in some white wine if you wanted to, and then deglaze it on the pan. By deglazing, what we're doing is we're raising the heat up to high. We're going to bring it to a boil, and it's going to burn off a little bit of the liquid, and then I'm going to reduce it down to a simmer. So we're going to let this go for maybe about 4 more minutes, and then the chicken will be done, and then we'll plate it up. All right, everybody, we are done. So take a look here. I plated the chicken breast. If you look inside, you can see that this is perfectly white on the inside. There's no pink. It's done just as well as it needs to be, and there's it's very juicy too. So it's a really nice chicken breast. This is the sauce that I made. So it's not super thick, but it tastes really good. So it's got the onions, the garlic, the thyme. One thing that you didn't see me do is I added a tablespoon of butter to it toward the end, and then mixed it all up really good, so that makes it a little bit more creamy. So you want to just go ahead and just add some of that to the top of your chicken. A little bit more of the juice there. And the Brussels sprouts came out perfectly too, so we are ready to eat.